Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride. Today's Road to Retail episode is powered by Market Performance Group, MPG, a leading omnichannel commerce agency delivering integrated commercial solutions that accelerate profitable growth. MPG's new growth initiative helps brands of any size win in every channel, whether launching DTC, scaling on Amazon, or entering brick and mortar. Its team, veterans from top retailers, CPGs, and digital platforms, connects brands with consumers across the full funnel, delivering right-size strategies, strategic go-to-market plans, advanced analytics, and deep retailer relationships for exceptional business results. Check them out at marketperformancegroup.com. Today's show is sponsored by Retail and Response. You've heard it a million times on this podcast. It's not about getting your product on the retail shelf. It's about moving product off the shelf and hitting the retailer's sales velocity hurdles fast. Otherwise, they're going to begin the discontinuation process. Trust me. A slow sales start can be fatal to your brand. You need consumers coming in seeking your brand. You know, the one they heard about on radio or saw on TV. If you think radio or TV advertising is too expensive, you need to speak with our friends at Retail and Response. With over 30 years helping drive hundreds of millions of dollars of sales for their clients, Retail and Response can get your brand on radio and TV for pennies on the dollar. Check them out at retailandresponse.com. That's retailandresponse.com. Big Chalk's Emerging Brands New Item Launch and Growth Toolkit transforms retail pitches into successful distribution outcomes. Instead of relying on a founder's story alone, brands gain consumer-validated proof across product concept, packaging, pricing, and marketing plans. Powered by advanced analytics and real-world benchmarks, it converts big ideas into retail-ready selling stories, fast and in a budget-friendly way. In just weeks, emerging brands gain the insights and credibility needed to stand out, lower buyer risk, and drive shelf success. Ready to replace hope with proof? Email emergingbrandswin@bigchalk.co and start building the story retailers can't ignore. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of America's finest emerging brand podcast, The Road to Retail. There he is, my good friend and partner, Tracy Priest. Tracy, how are you today?
Doing fantastic, Bruce. What a great morning, and excited about this episode today. I think our audience is really going to love this and looking for some wisdom from our guest today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who we have?
Today's going to be great. Today we're joined by Jesse Bartley, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of Scent Beauty, and they have built one heck of a business. So, Jesse, thank you for your time and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm super excited to talk with you today.
Great. So, before we dive into the specifics around Scent Beauty, Jesse, why don't you give the folks a little bit of your background, some of the other adventures you've had in your career, and how you've landed in your current seat?
Yeah, adventures is a good phrase or word for it, Bruce. I, like many others, was kind of a lost college student, and then it dawned on me that I need to do something with my life. I had a really good friend whose father had worked for in the beauty industry for Revlon and L'Oreal for many, many years, and I essentially begged him to try to get me in the door and get an internship, which I was able to do, and I had a wonderful experience there. And I ended up linking up with them very shortly after college. And interestingly enough, you said I was the head of sales. I actually quit that job because they said I hate sales, and it was in a sales position. Probably not the brightest move at the time, but then by the grace of God, I still don't know how or who circulated my resume, but I actually got a call from Cody saying, "Hey, we have an opening in the merchandising department. We think you'd be a good fit for it." I went and interviewed there. And my goal was always to get into marketing. I had this idea. I wanted to be creative. I love marketing. I love brands. Unfortunately for me, I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I wasn't from France, and Cody, really at that time was very difficult to penetrate that marketing team. They were taking the best of the best, which I at that time was not. So I got my foot in the door in merchandising, learned a ton about U.S. retail. And then I just always had in my head, I wanted to be on that global marketing team that really led the business over there. And I was going to do whatever it took. And what it took was to basically work in every department before getting to global marketing. So I worked on a go-to-market team. I worked on the operations side. And as frustrating as it was in the moment, because I had my goal of getting into marketing, it was like a blessing in disguise because I really understood then how the company worked across all different experiences and factors. And when I finally got to the global marketing team, I became a manager on Guess fragrances, which they had just acquired. I knew what everyone did, I knew how the system worked, and even better, everybody knew me. So when I needed to get things done, I knew who to call, I had a relationship, and it worked out super well for me. Then I had this epiphany where I wanted to do something I had a personal passion for, and I'm an absolute sports nut, like you, Bruce. We've had some conversations about it. So I had this idea. I want to work in sports. I went on this marathon of I interviewed from everybody from Turner Sports Network to NASCAR to MLB. Another just incredibly hard area to get a job in sports. But again, I had a connection who had a connection who had a connection. And I ended up leaving Cody and working for this small media firm, which ended up becoming a really big media firm. They had just begged, borrowed, and steal and won the PepsiCo Gatorade business. Um, no idea how. They were very small, but they won the business. And I went over there and led that business with very little experience in social media. But at that time, no one really had any experience. Brands didn't know what they needed to do with social media. So it was just this wild 3 years or so where I was literally at the Super Bowl with my phone, filming the Manning brothers, filming these athletes, some athletes who weren't even Gatorade athletes that we were then cutting up, creating content. It was like the Wild West. And needless to say, that ended in a lot of burnout. I think I had two or three cell phones on different clients. No one knew how to manage social media. It was like sleeping at the office kind of craziness. And when I left there, I kind of had a crossroad where I'm like, okay, I have this really big brand experience, corporate side with Cody and L'Oreal. I got the media thing, agency side going. What am I going to do with myself? And I was still working with some clients that I work with on the media side, like Warner Brothers. But then I was working with like local mom and pop pizzerias that were trying to figure out how to do, social marketing and localized marketing. And Steve Morris, who's the CEO of Scent Beauty, was the CMO of Cody at the time I was there. He was a dozen levels above me, but for whatever reason, we always just had this kind of connection, both professionally and personally. We got along really well. I think we looked at brand building the same way. And as I was consulting, he was consulting. He just retired from Cody, and him and I got together. I think we worked on a project for like 3 days, and he said, "Forget that project. I have this idea." And that idea was Scent Beauty, which at the time was a direct-to-consumer fragrance company. Essentially, it was, hey, we want to be the Glossier of fragrance, which back in 2018 was novel because it didn't really exist.
Right.
And then we launched, and then like 4 months later, COVID happened, and everything changed within the company, and we just went on this, 8 or 9 year crazy ride, and here we are today.
What a great story. I
I-
love that.
I'm exhausted listening to that, but
Yeah.
Me
good
too.
for you for having the. We just had a guest the other day, Jesse, and she made a really interesting comment. She said, "Gosh, so many people are in a hurry to take the elevator up on their career versus the stairs, but you realize you have to take the stairs to learn. So your adventure going through all the other departments at Cody seemed to have worked out because when you got to where you really wanted to go, you knew how the machine ran."
And,
Yeah.
and I wish I could take credit that that was the plan, but that was kind of just the plan that was forced upon me. But I really enjoyed now. We have a very young company, a lot of interns and coordinators who are passionate about the space. That is definitely one of the messages I deliver. You don't have to worry about pushing your career forward. Take what's in front of you, learn, and get to know. You may love marketing, but understand what operations does, what finance does, what retail does, because wherever you land, it will make you better for it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So let's jump in a little bit, Jesse. So talk to us a little bit. Our small emerging brand audience loves to hear backstories. So you touched on it a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about the backstory of Scent Beauty and then what gap you guys saw in the market that said, hey, let's go for this.
So Scent Beauty, I mean, truly for me, professionally and personally, it was like life changing. As I said, I was at this crossroad. I always just believed in Steve and his vision and his passion, and he had this idea about this direct to consumer company, which is what we started as when we became funded in 2018 and then launched in the fall of 2019. And the thought process was, hey, we're gonna take, the Cody or Revlon model where we look at talent-led brands, lifestyle brands, fashion brands, but we're gonna really do it on direct to consumer. We're gonna connect with the customer, we're gonna build brands, we're gonna tell the brand story. I would say our company, we're all marketers at heart. Like I said, I'm somehow the head of commercial, which I'll get to where that led, but I've always been a brand guy. And then, literally COVID happens, which was just it's one of those things where you always say, "Hey, this will be fine unless the world ends," and then the world ended, and it was like, "Oh my God, like what are we going to do? How's this going to change?" We found ourselves looking in the mirror of, is this the right path? Are we making the right decisions? Are we making too many mistakes? And it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because every brand ran to direct to consumer because stores were not open. So our, cost to play online just skyrocketed. Everyone became a direct to consumer fragrance company. And we had this epiphany of, hey, we're really good at storytelling, at launching brands. So let's do that online, but then let's roll out to retail. But rather than really like fully saturate and lose control of our brands, we want to keep our brands really tight. We want to have close relationships with retail. We want to do the things that the other guys don't want to do. Get our hands dirty, get in the weeds. And we had, just again, it's luck of the draw, right? When you have an opportunity come for you and you capitalize on the opportunity. So we had heard through the grapevines that the license for Stetson, the brand, was open. We went and we got into a very kind of heated pitch with them. We won the brand. It's a brand that I worked on at Cody, Steve worked on, so it was very dear to our hearts personally. We connected really, really closely with the team. We ended up winning that brand, and then by mid 2021, we now had a retail business because Stetson is in mass retail. So now we have our direct to consumer kind of launch pad, but we have a foot in Walmart, we have a foot in drug, we have a foot in value channel. And at that point, I had been working, my whole life almost now. I got to be this marketing, senior marketing director. Steve kind of pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, so I have an idea for you. I want you to run sales for the whole company." So as I said, I quit my first job because I was like,
Yeah.
I hate sales. I never want to work in it. Here I am. But then it was just, how do we do this the right way? As we acquire brands, how do we build the right retail plans? How do we eventually globalize? And what I learned when it comes to sales is, I found my passion, which is brand building and business building and entrepreneurship. And I think retail and commercial allows you to do that. And then I love people. I love relationships. I love fostering that brand connection and growth together. So I've been able to be successful in that role. And now Scent Beauty, we're over, 8-figure plus company. And it's just been a lot of hard work. I think a lot of passion, and we're not scared to say when we've made a mistake. And the mantra is, hey, don't be scared to swing and miss. Just don't swing and miss at the same pitch twice. It's, how do we continue to evolve and be agile and really get after it?
That's
That
great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Jesse, you guys are obviously in a really competitive category, and as you've kind of touched on already, differentiation is critical. Can you speak a little bit about, Scent Beauty's meaningful point of difference there in the marketplace and how you guys build brands in such a highly competitive, constantly evolving, and boy, I hope this comment is not out of bounds, but as a father of two young 20-year-old daughters, if that's a key to your market, boy, they change their mind like every 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean that's the TikTok culture, right?
Yes.
It all starts with the brand, right? It's either you have to cultivate a brand that you build internally from scratch, which we're working on now, or you have to bring in a brand that has that brand equity and awareness, or you have to bring in a talent that has that brand equity awareness, but it has to be a great brand. If it's not a great brand, it doesn't matter how good the product is, how good the marketing is. It has to be a brand that people believe in, that people love, and obviously that's easier said than done. And then, we're really good at storytelling. We're really good at marketing. We have an incredible team that is just going after the consumer at all the touch points, whether it's in brick and mortar retail, it's in digital, it's in social. And that's the fight, Bruce, because I have an 11-year-old daughter. So you think your 20-year-old daughter switched their minds? My daughter is now being seasoned on social media. She doesn't know a world without social media and Amazon and YouTube. And so it is difficult, but I think that's also our spirit is like I said, get in the weeds, have close relationships with retailers. We like to say we're a yes company. Like unless it is no in the 25th hour, like we're going to work on that retail plan. We're going to launch a brand. We're going to go above and beyond. And we also look at white spaces. Who's the up and coming talent? Is there a category like wellness or fashion that's missing something? Is it a price point? Is it an innovation? I think it's constantly looking at the marketplace to find where that white space is and then just attacking it as quickly as you can. And, as we grow, the one thing I always come back to is don't lose that kind of startup spirit. We've all worked in corporate America and we know the benefits and disadvantages. And what I don't want to do is ever lose that agility and that flexibility. We got to remain that yes company and be able to attack those opportunities as they arise.
Great.
Awesome. So let's switch gears a little bit, Jesse, and let's talk about the research that you do around either when you acquire a brand or launch a new brand. And then the second part of that is like kind of what is the process and the tools you use to evaluate the opportunity of a new brand or an existing brand.
I wish I had like an actual formulaic science because I probably wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be like a billionaire somewhere. But it's first of all, it's learning from your mistakes, and we've made plenty. We've launched brands where we've looked at it and said, man, like the brand seems right, the price seems right, the product seems right, the retailer's excited, and then it just hasn't worked, for whatever reason. You have to figure out why it doesn't work, and you kind of keep that in the back of your mind of we're not gonna make that same mistake twice. I think when it comes from a talent-led brand, there's a million analytics that we check off. What did the stadium tour do? What city sold out? Where's the streams coming from? How big is the streams? How are the merch sales? What's the engagement level? I can't tell you how many pop concerts I've been to in the past 5 years because I want to go there and I want to see the fans, seeing the talent in person. What's their reaction? How are they talking about it? What do the merch lines look like? But then it comes down to, is this meaningful to this person? Like, do they have a passion behind this? Because, going back to that social media culture, authenticity is king.
Yes.
And if it's not authentic, it's just not going to work. On the flip side, it's the same thing with a lifestyle and fashion brand. Like we have to figure out, is that consumer connection real? Why do they love the brand? Is there an emotional connection? Because fragrance is so emotional. Um, and these days I have the benefit to a lot of that analytics because we can look at social, we can do social listening, we can, use AI tools to scrape the internet to see what people are saying. But I think my biggest tool is we've created this amazing global network of distributors that I look at as extensions of Scent Beauty all over the world. I have an amazing partner in UK, all over Europe, Australia, Canada, Latin America, and I'll have a meeting with them. And I'll say, here's these brands we're seriously looking at. Here's the vision. What do you think? And if I get a lot of yeses of, hey, we're really excited about that. Here's why. I start building that out in my mind. What can the long-term business look like? And then we go for it. And that's kind of been the framework of how we do things. But I wish I could say it's 100% hit rate where every brand we launch is $100 million. It's not always the case, but we always have a love and a passion, when we launch a brand. There's always a true belief behind it. And it's never, hey, we're going to launch it and it's going to be out in the market for this year and it's going to be great. It's what does this look like 3, 5, 10 years from now? That's always the strategic thinking behind it.
I love the fact that you bring on your partners early in the process so you get everyone to buy in before you move forward. That's a very smart business move.
Yeah, and I think, what I always say when I'm having these, call them pitch meetings, which, I put us against anyone in the world because the passion that comes from my team just seeps out in the meeting and it becomes a love affair of, how much we love the brand and then the brand kind of falls in love with us. But it's always, hey, we're not here to say here's your brand, check the box, we're going to launch it. We do all that work, we show them the process of how we get to a place that we think would work. But ultimately, whether it's a pop star or a lifestyle brand or a fashion brand, we want to take their vision and then we want to be the fragrance experts and bring it to market. All those bad launches and mistakes we've made in our, I don't know, hundreds of years combined career, we want to make sure they don't make that mistake. We want to help them with trends, but we want that to come from the brand. It's your brand to launch. We're just helping you as a partner facilitate that and bring it to market.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Bruce.
that's interesting. It's also brilliant, as Tracy was pointing out, to bring on your partners early because that gives you a couple of powerful sentences in the follow-up meetings where I could say, Jesse, as you recommended, we've now made the bottle blue. So it's hard to get people to reject their own input and ideas. So you get a few head nods up front, and it also validates and proves you were listening to them. And people like to be listened to.
Yeah.
All right, so Jesse, here this is going to be really interesting. So with regard to these celebrity-driven brands that you guys work on, how do you guys identify and launch these brands? So let's say, people on your staff come and say, "Hey, Jesse, I have an idea, and here's three celebrities we should probably dig into." How do you guys even begin to decide where to even try to dig a hole?
Well, I think the first two thoughts are, is this talent complementary to our current portfolio? Because as I said, every brand we're in is all about how big and long can we work with this brand. It's not a 1 year thing and we change someone out and we launch a new brand. We're looking, we want to, I always say, hey, 20 years from now when we're launching our 15th fragrance, we're going to be laughing about this first moment. And I really mean that. So it's how does this person complement what we're currently doing? What's the global scale? Because we're all about being a global company. We want to be able to launch talent that are really global stars. And even if they're not a global star today, do we collectively believe that they're going to be a global star? And we can help build that brand with them, whether it's music or acting or whatever. As they build their total global brand, we can be a big part of that. It's funny, you talk about Bruce, like when people bring ideas, but it's almost bad if I, the middle-aged, man, am the one deciding who the talent is. So I have a collective of very smart, hip, passionate young people that starts in our office that goes out to the world and brings suggestions and we talk about why. And then it kind of goes into that process of, is this person going to be a global superstar? I go to all the markets, we talk to them, what are your feeling about this? They do the same process of me. Hey, I talked to my daughter, I talked to this young person in our office. Here's why they love it, here's why they don't. We obviously do a lot of the data dive. What does their social look like? What's their engagement? What do their merch sales look like at concerts? What are their movies doing? All those data points. And then it sounds a little crazy, but like I said, we're a people business. And we don't sign any deal till we sit down with that person and look them in the eye and hear them talk about the project because we have to connect on a personal and professional level. We have to connect with their management on a personal professional level. And they have to love it. They have to want it because, back in the 2000s when we were launching celebrity brands at Cody and it was a new thing, you could put a celebrity's name on a bottle and you do a PR event and you do this and it's out in the world and everyone's buying it. But now with social, that's just not the case. Like it has to be the vision of that talent. It has to be. They have to be part of it. They have to love it. They have to want it. And it becomes a person or people decision just as it is a brand and business decision in the end.
And like you said
So,
earlier, it's got to be authentic because people
Totally.
today, and especially Gen Z, they can sniff out you know what I mean, being authentic or not. They can sniff it out in like 2 seconds.
so Jesse, a couple of follow-up things that I'm curious about. What percentage of new brand ideas might be inbound, where someone contacts you guys versus you guys develop the thought internally and then, execute some outreach?
I don't know the percentage, but what I could tell you is I am, because that's also part of my role is, new business development, let's call it. It's nonstop. It is nonstop. It is what are we doing next? Who are we working with next? Those conversations take 2 years, so we have to kind of bring them into the pipeline. But myself, and my team, we're so passionate about what's next, what's the next innovation, building our brands that we already have, but also how do we continue to build our portfolio. Um, and it's really from all over the place, Bruce. I have great relationships with all the major agencies in the world, the UTAs, the CAAs, amazing people. Um, this isn't like every industry. The beauty industry is a small industry. I'll have someone call me who said, "Hey, I worked with this person 5 years ago and they're interested in a fragrance. Would you be interested in working with them?" I mean, a lot of grapevine, um, you kind of reach outs. So it's constantly evolving all over the place. I'll be walking in the mall with my daughter and I'll see a huge line outside of a store and immediately I'm on my phone saying, "Do they have a fragrance yet? What could this be? What does it look like?" LinkedIn, all the person to person connections. It's just a constant, I think, evolution.
So the other question I have, and with you don't have to go into too many details, but celebrities, it can be a double-edged sword. How do you guys protect yourself if there's, maybe XYZ celebrity is super hot and everyone loves them, but every now and then they do something crazy and you guys are like, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, we tend to stay away. Like I said, that's why it's so important to have that meeting. I mean, I think you can tell a lot about someone, the way they carry themselves, the questions they're asking, the conversation you have. Um, those relationships with the management teams are also super important because ultimately the management is what's helping them guide their career and build their brand. So not only do we have to have a lot of faith in the brand and believe that they're going to be a global superstar or are a global superstar, but are we aligned with what the management thinks their brand is and where it's going? And there's no way to safeguard yourself, Bruce, but I think myself, and especially Steve. I mean, Steve is like the godfather of celebrity fragrances. I mean, he really was the one that started the whole thing at Cody. He's really good at that personal connection and seeing through that and understanding. Um, and now it's even more so, like we said, because the best talent-led brands are when you make the consumer and their fan base feel like they're connecting with that person. So fragrance already is very emotional. Like your nose and your scent, it tells a story in your brain. Bruce, the smell of honey may mean something to you that is different to me, and it takes you to a place. When you throw a talent in there that people, love and follow, them creating a fragrance, now it almost like it opens the door to I'm going to connect with that person. I'm going to get to know them on a different level. That's really what we're looking to do. And the first one is always like that consumer is going to buy it because they love that person. But our goal is we want to build it as a brand so they keep coming back, which is great product, great fragrances, and really true brand building.
Great. Thank you.
So, Jesse, let's talk about how you launch brands out into the world at Scent Beauty. So, is it start out at DTC, Amazon, brick and mortar? Where do you start, and then how does that evolve in the process?
Yeah, I mean it's not one size fits all. I could say that. Typically, we start on digital. We have an incredible digital team, because that's where the brand gets to own everything, right? It's like their own store. They're able to start the story. It's storytelling through content, through media, and in a perfect world, we launch there. It's somewhat exclusive for a few weeks. We're able to tell that story. And then we love working with partners. Like I can't do the transactional retail relationships. That's just not a recipe for building brands and for long-term success. And we have some amazing retail partners. Whether we then go exclusively to one retailer, we go to exclusively category level retailers where we have one mass retailer, one drug retailer, one grocer. We would rather leave sales on the table and build demand, keep the brand tight and tell that long-term brand story. And that goes the same for all of our global partners. So like I said, we have over 30 distribution partners. It's probably the thing I'm most proud of that I've been a part of at Scent Beauty because we started as a North American, a US company, and now we're in over 115 markets, give or take. And that was
Wow.
that was cultivated just by meeting them, going to trade shows, and we literally handpicked all our partners. And again, we have that personal connection with them, and we talk to them about their strategy, and their strategy aligns with us. So, for instance, we launch a new brand and we put it on our website for 3 or 4 weeks, and then we roll it out to Ulta or Walmart as an exclusive. In the UK, they're doing the same thing. We're selling direct to consumer in UK, and then they roll it out to a Boots exclusive or a Selfridges exclusive, and it's all about having an amazing launch, but keeping that long-term brand health. We don't want to be everywhere at all varying price points. We want to, maintain our brand at, even if it's a mass level, we want to be at the top mass level and work directly with that retailer in that market.
That makes sense. That's smart.
So, Jesse, you've been touching on this a little bit throughout the conversation so far, but perhaps a little more detail if you would. What role do social and digital marketing play in your world? And might that vary by brand? If you have I'm making this up, obviously, if one of your talent is just absolutely massive on TikTok, is that where you would spend your promotional dollars? Or do you guys, I know you said it's not one size fits all, but it's like, hey, look, here's the playbook. We're going to establish the run. And once we know we can move the ball, we'll try some other things.
Yeah, again, not one size fits all, and God bless our digital team because that landscape, like I feel like changes by the second.
Yeah.
But it's social media is it's a direct connection to your consumer. And that's why it's not only so important, but it's also so rare. I think the difficulty is the platform and the demographics are constantly changing. Like if you asked this question 18 months ago, the answer on Instagram would be different than it is today. And again, that's not my expertise. I have much smarter people on my digital team that understand that. But, an ad on Instagram 18 months ago looks different than it does now because maybe it's more top of funnel now, and back then it was more bottom funnel. Something that just blew me away was I have this infographic I'll share with you guys after where about a year ago, TikTok was like the fifth highest seller of fragrances, like, higher than huge retailers that have been around for decades. Exploded on the scene, like, people just spending all their time there, trusting these influencers, and buying. And it just was massive. And now we're seeing TikTok get less to a place of bottom funnel where they're purchasing there and people are going there for more of education.
Yeah.
So it's on us that we have to constantly keep up with what is the purpose of social? What does the advertising look like? How is that connected to our retail partners? And that is very, very difficult because, like I said, it's like every day I feel like it changes. But if you don't have that, I don't see how you can not o- you can't launch a brand in 2026 and you certainly can't sustain one because it's such a big piece of the puzzle to have that direct to consumer connection and build the awareness, long term of your brand.
And building a community.
Totally. And done through these micro influencers and affiliates. It's like having this online sales environment, and that becomes even more extreme when you're dealing with the talent who already has this huge following of people who are engaged. How do we engage them to not only buy, but do they become sellers? Are they affiliates? Are they influencers? Again, it's funny, thinking back to when Scent Beauty just started about 9 years ago, the way affiliates were looked at then versus now, it's like it's night and day. They both do
Yeah.
the same thing, but because of the evolution of social media and new platforms and TikTok, I think their importance and their role just constantly changes. So that's what I was talking about. The culture of Scent Beauty is to be creative, but also to remain like a startup, remain agile, remain flexible, because especially in that digital world, the change is just so drastic and constantly happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to keep track of. So let's talk about Gen Z fragrance consumer. So talk to us a little bit about that and maybe a little bit about how they differ from, millennials and boomers and all the other groups.
Yeah, again, constantly changing. That's part of it. They're always changing their mind. I think some people like to say they don't have an attention span because they have like the TikTok mindset, which is maybe partially true.
Yeah,
But I like to
totally.
give them much more credit. I just think that they are kind of free and independent. The simplest way that I always describe it is, traditionally, Tracy, Bruce, myself, certainly, you may have a fragrance or two or three fragrances you like, and it's on your nightstand or it's in your bathroom, and you wake up in the morning, you put some on your neck, you put some on your wrist, see you later. Maybe you come back home and you put it on again before you go out. That's the traditional way of applying fragrances. Gen Z doesn't care. They will douse themselves with it in the morning. They'll put it in their gym bag. They want a body spray. They want a pen spray. Like they don't fall in line and just do what everyone else did because you're supposed to do it. And that goes for everything. How they consume it, how they look at media, how they buy it, where they're buying it. So it's almost like that digital conversation. It's like this constant evolution all over every touch point all the time. But at the same time, it's exciting because it's like things that didn't work in the past. It's like we don't have to just keep doing that. We can go crazy and try something else. Anecdotally, we have our head of product innovation told me a funny story. She has two sons that are like preteen, like 10 and 12 or 11 and 13, and they love sports. They love basketball. They have their gym bag before the game. They take out a 150, 200 bottle dollar fragrance, and they completely douse themselves. They
Oh,
play the game. They come back at halftime. They have a different fragrance that they take out. Their halftime fragrance. They completely douse themselves. Post game, they have another fragrance. They completely douse themselves. And then they go home and it gets put back on the shelf of their 20 fragrances that looks like a trophy case. And that's a young male preteen. Like that just didn't exist three,
yeah.
4, 5 years ago. So for me, it excites me because it just constantly opens up opportunity in our category and changes things, I think, for the better.
Hey Bruce, when you played basketball, did you have a favorite fragrance when
I
you
was going to
played?
say I would douse myself with the worst smelling stuff possible so no one would want to guard me. That would be good for my stat line. So Jesse, and I know you've already talked about, the relationships you guys built and the retailer and distributor relationships, 115 markets. But when you guys, so let's maybe use a US centric point of view on this next topic. So when you guys are thinking through, you have a new scent or a new celebrity scent, and you're ready to start pushing it out to brick and mortar. How do you guys decide which of your partners to approach first? We had a buyer from a major retailer who gave a cautionary tale to all the entrepreneurs out there, and this fellow said, you know, make sure you really understand the profile of each retailer shopper because every brand doesn't belong everywhere. So, how do you guys maybe work through so you either don't hurt feelings if someone's like, Jesse, how come I didn't get that first? But you also know the one of the things that's really precious in business or sports or whatever is positive momentum. Because if you go out to a retailer and for some reason it was a bad choice and it kind of gets off to a slow start or a dud, it makes future discussions a little harder.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it early on. You have to know who is the consumer of that retailer. That's number one, right? And that's not just the consumer, but it's going into the retailer. What are their price points? Because if you think you're going to go in there and be 50% higher than everybody else, you better have a damn good product and a damn good brand because the consumer is super smart. So that's kind of step one. I think it's also what is the goal of the brand, right? Is it a new brand that we're really trying to build awareness on? And I like to take the approach of going to mass with a brand like that because they're building their brand, whether it's a fashion brand or a talent, they're doing everything to build their brand through their music or whatever it is that they do. And then, you're talking about you can in year one be in 10 or 12,000 doors. That's big time awareness. We just have to make sure we really, really support that business because it's a lot of doors and we want it to do well. And there are definitely hurt feelings because we have great relationships with everyone from Dollar General up to Nordstrom and in between. But those are very different brands, right? A brand that's in Dollar General may not be a brand in Nordstrom, may not be a brand in Ulta. Um, I just always believe in full transparency and honesty. I'm not going to let one of my retail partners find out what's happening in another retailer through social media or through the talent's account. I'm going to say, here's what's happening, here's what we have, here's our thought process. Tell me why you think otherwise, and I'll tell you why I agree or disagree. And I think that always ends in a positive way because everyone wants to do well for themselves and well for their business. And my whole thing is if you didn't get that one, then I'll tell you why you didn't get that one. Let's now work on something together. Okay, so you want a talent-led brand. You didn't get that one. I'm going to bring you some talent-led brands that I think fit better for you. Let's work on that together and we'll launch it and everyone will be happy.
Yeah, I think what's great about the way you just wrapped up that point is I think you build credibility for yourself as well because you articulate first off, you don't let them find out, you tell them. And then you also tell them you're willing to work with them and one day they'll be the retailer that makes the most sense. So it's like, I'm a little disappointed, but that's logical and I didn't have to hear about it behind the barn. They told me what was happening.
And Bruce, the flip side of that is one of the mistakes I made early on, not having much commercial retail experience was I would go to a retailer and my presentation looked like a takeout menu. I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this. And it's like, so what are you interested in? I think you also lose credibility doing that because immediately you're telling the retailer like this person's not thinking about me when they're building this brand. They're just
No.
they're opening their jacket and they have all the watches in their jacket and you're selling.
Yeah.
So, we rethought and that was early days, but that's been long not the way we do things. Now it's going back to the previous question about how do you find the right talent or the right fashion brand. I always now have in my mind what the distribution looks behind it before I sign it. And you want to make sure that the brand is aligned with that because you want them to be excited about where they're being sold. But we know that commercial landscape so well, and we can pick a brand and say that would work really well at this retailer at this price point. And we try to build things for our retail partners. We try to pitch them ideas before we, even have it because we want to make it for them, not just the brand, but that's the content, the support plan. It's really partnership, I think is the right way to go about it.
So do you cut? So what you're saying is you customize the program to the retailer based on your understanding of their needs and their demographics.
In many instances, like the brand is the first thing that I'm like, I'm excited about this. This will
Yeah.
work. This will be huge for, all the reasons we talked about. But then as we customize, like you said, we customize for our retail and our distribution partners. I mean, that has to be part of it because it is a business, right? Like you could
Yeah.
be the best fashion brand ever, but if you're not commercially successful in this category, no one wins. So step one is choosing the right brand, and then I think it's what's the perfect plan for this, and then how do we customize that brand for this retailer where it makes sense for everyone. the brand's excited, the retailer's excited, we're excited. And then we're storytelling at that level. It's not, hey, we're just going to throw it in a dozen places and we do one kind of blanket marketing campaign. It's we want to turn all the dials at your retailer and talk to your consumer so you have that success that you're looking for.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And the retailer then feels like you're a good partner.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, here's a great question for you, Jesse. An entrepreneur comes up to you on the street and says, "Hey, Jesse, I'm thinking about launching a CPG brand. What's the best advice you give them?"
Man. Well, I never want to turn off anyone's dreams, but I think the first thing is, make sure you have a lot of money and you
Yes.
understand what you're doing because what people don't understand is the upfront costs and everything is immense, right? Like
Yes.
the worst problem that entrepreneur can have is having just massive success out the gate because you have to pay for that success. Product costs money, and it takes a while to get paid for that product. That's
Yeah.
that's the unsexy part about having, I think, an incredible brand. Um, but the more creative dream chasing me would say, just make sure you believe in it. If you're launching it to make money, it probably isn't going to work. If you're launching it because you just think it's going to be incredible and it's going to connect with the consumer and you see the vision for it, then I feel a lot better about it. But just make sure you have a really good CFO and someone that knows operations inside and out, and you'll be okay.
Great advice. Great advice. All right,
Okay.
Bruce.
Yep. So Jesse, we're getting near the end here. So thank you again for your time. So who's had the greatest influence on your career? And if you don't want to, you certainly don't have to name names, but what did this person do for you that maybe you didn't understand initially, but as time has gone by, you're like, man, that was good learning. And I still have no idea why they invested their time in me when I didn't know a damn thing.
I mean, I've had many incredible mentors. One of my newer mentors, Bruce, we talked about him early, Mark Greenberger. I mean, I met him. We both were going to a conference in Greece, and we had never met before. And we met up at the airport bar, and a bottle of wine later, before we even got on the flight. It's like just an amazing person to have in my corner. I had also someone named Diego Mandelbaum. He was, oh God, I don't remember his title. He's the CEO of a beauty company now, but I think he was really the first person that believed in me at Cody, that didn't care about my resume, but saw something, in me. I would have never made it to that global marketing role without him. That's for sure. He still remains someone I look at as a mentor and also a friend. And then certainly last but not least, Steve Morris. I mean, Steve, his idea for Scent Beauty, him believing me and thinking of me to be a part of that, is life changing. It's opened up so many professional and personal experiences for me to grow, not only as a business person, but as a human being. I started this when I had like one baby child, and now I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. So it's like it's been such a big part of my life, and for the most part, I've reported to him from day one as I've moved up and advanced my career. So I'm learning from him both directly and indirectly, and just has always been someone that's believed in me and fought for me and given me advice. And we've gone through the gauntlet. Launching a startup company is not easy. There's a
Nope.
lot of crazy, crazy times, and when you go through the fire with somebody, it's like whether you like it or not, you're bonded. And I feel like that with Steve. So I'm really grateful to have him as someone that's a mentor and also a friend.
That's great. I loved it. Love to hear that. All right, Jesse, the most important topic of the day. So tell us your favorite sports team, band, or brand and why you follow them.
And given your position, you probably can't name a brand. That would get you in trouble.
Yeah,
I got, I
like
have
naming your favorite child.
I have two thoughts about this, and it's not going to be anything to do with the beauty world per se. Well, first of all, I'm a diehard sports fan, New York sports fan. Bruce, you and I talked about, our love for sports when we first met. But even though my first love was baseball, and I love the NFL, today on the game one of the finals, it's got to be the Knicks, baby. Go New York, go New York, go. bring a championship back to New York for the first time in a zillion years. I want to see the city just, light up with that. So that's number one for sports team right now. And the other, when we were initially talked about this question, I was thinking about this question. The one thing that got my brain going is podcasts and podcast advertising. So obviously, you guys have this amazing podcast. I'm a big podcast guy, humor, sports, lifestyle. If I see someone I think is interesting, whether it's a political person or writer or sports interview, I always jump on. I want to hear what they have to say. I am a sucker for products that advertise on podcasts. And no, Bruce is not paying me to say this, but I have so many brand affinities because on a podcast like a fragrance, there's like a weird, personal connection. You feel like a good podcast makes you feel like you're in the room and you're part of the conversation. So you get to know these people and you trust them. And I think when a brand and a podcast are able to match up where that brand makes sense for that podcast and it's authentic, it's got to be a selling machine because I've bought supplements, jeans, all different types of things, and I still buy them. I buy them to this day. Mugsy jeans I bought off a podcast. I'm still buying them, and it's just, it's one of those things that I think. How do you find the right consumer with the right audience and land the plane there? And it's super powerful.
I
So a
love
couple
that.
of things. The management highly endorses the Knicks reference. This is being recorded on the morning of game one. I've just finished going over some out of bounds plays with the Knicks coaching staff. We're very optimistic. And I'd also like to introduce the audience to our latest sponsor of the Road to Retail podcast, Scent Beauty. But so, Jesse, thank you so much for your time today. Why don't you tell the group how they might be able to reach out to you or learn more about your firm? What's the best way to do that, please?
Yeah, so you could follow us across all socials at Scent Beauty. We also have scentbeauty.com, which is our storytelling and also selling platform. You could find me on LinkedIn, Jesse Bartley. I'm a social media guy behind the scenes. I kind of follow it, but don't put myself out there too much. And also have email, jbartley at Scent Beauty. But love talking to you guys. It's been awesome. Honestly, could probably sit on here and all day and just shoot it with you. But thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the time.
Well,
Hey,
thanks again, Jesse. All right, Tracy, I hope your arm is loose. The big finish.
absolutely. But first of all, I want to say, Jesse, if we want to have a separate podcast and talk about the Knicks game tonight and do that tomorrow, we're willing to do that. But anyway,
I'm in,
on another.
100% in.
So anyway, audience, thank you so much for joining us today. Jesse, you were awesome. Great insight. Great talk about branding. So audience, continue to follow us on all our social media platforms, whether that be Spotify, where you listen, or Apple Podcast, also on LinkedIn. We also have our YouTube page. And then also you can find all of our episodes on our website, which is the number two, retail.com. And we post every Tuesday. So look for this episode coming to you soon. But thanks again, Jesse. We really appreciate the time and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck out there, folks.